Welcome to week 13 of the head coach episode. I'm here with Yanni. How's it going, man?
How you doing, buddy?
No big deal or anything, but this is officially our 50th episode. We're halfway to 100. I guess we're officially veteran YouTubers now, aren't we?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's get into the game breakdowns. And we have a full slate this week. We haven't had one of these since like week 5. And I'll start out. This is going to be the Thanksgiving morning game. The Bears are going into Detroit to play the Lions. The Bears have an implied team total of 19 points. The Lions have an implied team total of 29.5 points. For the Bears, our only flat out start for you is DJ Moore, and we're going to tricky decision everyone else. More on that in a minute. It's a mess. Then for the Lions, we're gonna STD Jared Goff and Sam Laporta, and then we're starting everyone else. So let's start with the Lions first. It was kind of a down week for some of their fantasy guys. Monty left injured. Laporta had 5 targets, like 2 catches, 3 fantasy points. Jared Goff was like sub 15. I think that was more of a testament to the Colts playing good defense than really anything about the Lions like falling off. Here's the deal though. This Bears team, they aren't great. They aren't a great team. They're not a complete team, but they still, in my mind, have a championship level defense. Specifically, their pass defense is very, very good. And how you beat this Bears team is you run the ball at them. We've seen games like the Arizona Cardinals. The Vikings did it to them last week. You can run on this Bears team, so I think Dan Campbell is going to take advantage of that. If Monty does not go, DeAndre Swift is like a top 1 start for me on the week, other than maybe Saquon. So I guess top 3. But yeah,
Yeah.
love him here. Or yeah, that's what I meant. Get Gibbs. Yeah, if Monty sits, start Gibbs is like a top 3. Like you're gonna definitely want him. And then pay attention to the Amon Ra St. Brown injury. He popped up. I would assume that he goes here. He's a tough guy. I mean, Dan Campbell's guys like just want to play, right? I don't think they want to sit out unless absolutely necessary. But we'll see on a short week. The idea with Goff and Laporta, right? Like I said, it's just that this Bears secondary is good. I think that this will be the Lions running the ball down the Bears' throat. Goff is he doesn't have that rushing upside, right? So if he's not throwing for a bunch of yards and touchdowns, usually you don't want to start him in fantasy if you can afford to. And then Laporta, it's just the production hasn't been there, right? In theory, it could be a good game for him, especially if Amon-Ra doesn't go. It would siphon more targets his way. I think even if Amon-Ra does go, right, the Jalen Johnson matchup is one to watch. It might be a Laporta game, but it's really hard to say, in my opinion, until we see some like 2023 level production from Sam Laporta. For the Bears, this is really interesting, right? We told you last week that we thought that it would be a down Bears offensive week. We told you to sit Caleb. We told you to sit a lot of these pieces in the passing offense. But shockingly, the Bears were moving the ball. They they brought it to overtime. They recovered the first onside kick of the season. Caleb was able to hit DJ Moore on like a 30-yard crosser to get him into field goal range. There were things to like from the Bears offense. I think with Thomas Brown taking over as the offensive coordinator for Shane Waldron, it's done at least something for this Bears team, and Caleb is looking pretty good. That being said, though, this Lions defense surprisingly is playing really, really well. I don't believe they've allowed a touchdown in the second half for like 2 or 3 straight weeks. I still think that they can be taken advantage of in the passing game, though. So it's kind of like, what do we really do here, right? DJ Moore, we're gonna lock in as a start because it's been clear that they're trying to get him the ball, right? He was finally getting those deeper targets. 2 weeks ago, it was like he was a screen merchant. Last week, he was actually getting those targets down the field. DJ Moore is a great player, right? It's just when Caleb sets in, you're gonna want him. It's just kind of like if Caleb has a bad week, DJ Moore is liable to disappear. And then everyone else, including DeAndre Swift, it's just tricky decision, right? This Lions team just did a fantastic job shutting down Jonathan Taylor on the ground last week. A lot of the copium I've seen from Colts fans on that is that, hey, well, we had 3 rookies starting on our offensive line. We were getting no push. I don't think there's a worse offensive line in the league than the Chicago Bears. I mean, it is a revenge game for him. There's an argument to be made he could get there, like on dump offs, right, and targets in the passing game. But if I don't think they're gonna have success traditionally running the football, it's kind of hard to call DeAndre Swift a locked-in start. And then all of the extra passing game pieces, right? Whether it's Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, it's just Caleb Williams too. It's just whether or not you think Caleb is going to have a good game. His play suggests that it would be a good game here, but this Lions defense is also playing really well. We'll see what like trend continues. I think it's gonna be probably some success here from the Bears. Cautiously optimistic for their offense in this game. What do you think, Yanni?
No, not a whole lot to add, man. You got it. I would say like the triage of the Bears receiving core. I think DJ Moore is the clear one. I think if you need an emergency start, particularly in PPR, Keenan Allen's perfectly reasonable. I see Keenan Allen on like most of my waivers right now in half PPR leagues. I don't think he should be on waivers personally. And then Odunze is someone who, in my opinion, is not startable right now. But if it's a total emergency and you need to, that's fine. Yeah, just something to keep in mind. Odunze had well over 100 air yards last week. Only 15 yards of those 100 yards were catchable. So, I mean, that's ugh. I'm really only interested in DJ Moore for the time being on the offense.
Yeah, I was shocked to see the amount of targets Keenan Allen got. I was kind of the opinion he was getting phased out of this offense, and Adunze was kind of on the rise, but maybe hold off on that prognostication. I don't know what to. Would you drop Adunze at this point?
No, I actually wouldn't, because if one of them goes down, I think the other two are going to be, at really nice, right? So I would hold all three of them. I would be surprised, dude, if you have five better receivers to have in your lineup at this point in the year, good for you. But I would be surprised, dude. To me, those are like almost lottery tickets in the sense that if one of the three were to miss some time, they have such a nice schedule rest of season. I wouldn't drop any of them.
Yeah.
If you have to, well, you're fine. If you have to, you can drop Keenan or Odunze, but I would rather not.
And fun fact for the audience, this Lions team, they are 26th in terms of fantasy quarterback scoring, and they're ninth against the wide receivers. So for whatever reason, the wide receivers are producing more than the quarterbacks, at least from a fantasy perspective this year. I don't know why that is. I don't know why the delta is like that. If it will be different this week, I think it is a tricky decision, but I would lean towards your Bears guys this week.
Okay, Giants at Cowboys. Got your Thanksgiving football. Should be an interesting game. Giants with an implied team total of 17. Cowboys with an implied team total of 20.5 at home. We're not entirely sure who the Giants starting quarterback is going to be. Is there the biggest difference between Locke and Cutlets? I don't really think so, but we'll get into it here. Even though Tyron Tracy Jr. was benched last week after a fumble and Singletary ended up getting in the end zone, I do believe they're going to give the ball back to Tyron Tracy. He's a really promising rookie and one of the two or three bright spots on the team right now. I cannot see them stunting his growth because he fumbled the ball once. They are a football team, though, that's actively trying to lose, not win games. So I guess that is within the realm of possibilities, right? They don't behave in the way that a team trying to win behaves. If you're trying to win, though, Tracy will be out there. For your sits, Robinson, the Wandale Robinson, the PPR scam is officially done. If it is Tommy Cutlets, it's kind of weird the way they reported it. He popped up on the injury report after Monday. So either he got injured at practice Monday, or they're lying to try to save face in case they need to bench him. I don't know if the veterans talked to Dayball. Dayball said it's not 100%. He goes, there's just some debate back and forth about it. If Tommy Cutlets goes, I'm going to ask you guys to sit him. However, for your sort of tricky decisions, if Locke goes, I think Locke is like a more so for DFS. He's only $4,500 on DFS right now, like $1,500 cheaper than Tua, $2,000 cheaper than Jared Goff for the Thanksgiving slate. Look, man, if you want to throw him in there for 45, he will be my quarterback for $4,500 if he is $4,500 when he goes, right? So I don't hate him as a DFS streamer at all. I probably would prefer not to stream Cutlets if need be. We're calling Neighbors a sort of tricky decision. Since his concussion and since his groin injury, which he said has been a season-long thing, he has not gone well above 10 points this year. He's had the volume, but he has not had a touchdown in that time. He didn't have any volume the first half of the game with Tommy Cutlets, did the second half, got close to 10 PPR points. Maybe it's a sort of a squeaky wheel situation. Dayball said they need to get him more involved. He's bitching to the media and his sunglasses looking really sharp, right? Normally when that happens, it's a squeaky wheel game. He's much closer to a start for me than a sit, but I also understand I have a roster where I was pretty surprised. I have Drake London, Malik Neighbors, and Lad McConkey. And I was taking a long, hard look going, do I want to start Lad McConkey over Malik Neighbors this week? And that is not something I would have thought I got to at any point in the year, right? So I think it's perfectly reasonable if you have those types of decisions to maybe make a call like that. For the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb, he's getting so much volume, especially in full PPR. You're good to go. In half PPR, you're still starting. I mean, let's be realistic, right? You're not going to sit the guy that you got in the top first half, the half of the first round. Not what you drafted him for, but he's certainly still eligible. Ferguson or Schoonmaker, whoever is the starting tight end for the Cowboys, it seems like Cooper Rush has a willingness to feed them. Like he seems perfectly happy to feed them. And I actually think their starters rest of season, whichever one's healthy. If Ferguson's out, start Schoonmaker. If Ferguson's in, start Ferguson. I saw Ferguson dropped in like 4 leagues. Go get him, guys, if he's on your waivers. I actually love that move rest of season. And then Dowdle, soft defense, but they're still going to want to feed Dowdle. This is a football team that's still trying to win games because Jerry Jones cannot deal with the shame of losing, right? He won't let them tank, even though it's probably a team that should be tanking. And they will feed Dowdle. It looks like they're still willing to do that. I'm starting him. And then your sort of tricky decision for this team, just one of them, it's going to be Cooper Rush. Again, more of a DFS play. I believe he's even cheaper than Drew Lock. I wish I remembered off the top of my head. I just did my brackets for this week. I don't know. Again, he's dirt cheap. New York Giants are a really soft defense. He's been able to move the ball. Like you can start so many studs from the other 2 games if you're starting Cooper Rush at your quarterback. I don't hate it at all. I would stack him with his tight end if you're going to roll him out there. Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, at least from DFS, right? Like just in this game, I would take Cooper Rush over Locke or Cutlets, just because we've seen him at least be somewhat effective against the Texans and led the team to a win against the Redskins last week. That's not to say that this Cowboys team is good or Cooper Rush is a good player, but look out. We might have a Cowboys 2-game winning streak, and they're going to win on Thanksgiving. That'd be nice for them. Then for the Giants, just want to touch on a couple of things here. At least my read on the situation is that it will still be Tommy Cutlets if he can go. He got crunched in that Bucks game. I don't know if you watched it, Yanni. He almost got killed on one play. He was
I
down for
did.
a little bit. He just
Yeah.
getting just assaulted in the pocket. I mean, here's the deal though. If Tommy Cutlets can't go, Drew Lock looks good in this game, and he ends up being the starter for the rest of the season, look to add that guy. The Giants have an amazing schedule rest of season. It's super, super soft. And then Neighbors, man, it is time to readjust your expectations, fantasy managers. I know it felt really good for the first couple of weeks of the season. He was like a top 3 guy in everyone's, I don't know, season rankings for fantasy. It has nothing to do with the talent of the player. It's just if Tommy Cutlets is the quarterback, I don't think there's going to be enough there. He hasn't gotten a touchdown since week 4, right? I think in this game, and going forward, this Giants team is going to try and be run heavy here with Tyrone Tracy and Singletary, mostly Tyrone Tracy. But if Locke is in, maybe we can reconvene, have a different conversation. But I would say he's like a wide receiver 3 or flex rest of season. As unfortunate as that is. All right, then the third Thanksgiving game, we got Miami going to Green Bay to play the Packers. The Dolphins have an implied team total of 22 points. The Packers have an implied team total of 25.5 points. For the Dolphins, our only starts for you are Devon Achane and Johnny Smith, and then we're going to tricky decision to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. More on that in a minute. I'm sure that looks weird to you guys. Then for the Packers, we're going to start Josh Jacobs and Jaden Reed. We're going to sit Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson. Then we're going to tricky decision Jordan Love and Tucker Kraft. So we'll start with the Packers first, I guess. And at least right now, reports are this may be a heavy weather game. This could be a snow game, and I believe it was 30-mile-an-hour winds. Is that right, Yanni?
Yeah, I don't remember if that's. I'll pull up the weather report for you while you're talking. I don't remember if that was the Bills one or that one, but let me check while we're talking.
Okay. Well, long story short, there is an expectation that this may be a bad weather game. That is why you see some of these guys that I think would normally be starts in this spot is tricky decisions. I think it's going to be very important to look for the weather, right? Jordan Love last week against the 49ers, he didn't really have to throw the ball very much. He had the rare no interception game for Jordan Love because number one, the Niners dropped interceptions, and number two, they said, hey, we can just run the ball with Josh Jacobs here and be perfectly fine doing that, right? This Dolphins team is actually leading the league in holding fantasy quarterbacks to points, right? They're 32nd. So it's not a great matchup. And if the weather is not good either, I don't feel awesome calling Jordan Love a locked in start here. I think this might just be a game where the Packers ground and pound the Dolphins if they can. Same with Tucker Kraft, right? That's why he's in tricky decision. I believe he's had 2 targets over the past 2 weeks. He got in the end zone against the Niners, so he kind of got you there, but the volume just hasn't been there. It's just kind of, I think he's touchdown dependent at this point. Low end tight end one to high end tight end two. Dobbs and Watson, these are just kind of like the outside pieces of the Packers passing offense. Like some weeks they may get more targets than the other guy, but hard to prognosticate. Plus bad weather. I would look elsewhere if you can. Jaden Reed, he's the baby Debo. They scheme him the ball in his hands more so than the other guys in the passing game. That's where we think he's a little bit more weatherproof. And then Josh Jacobs coming off a 3 touchdown performance. I believe he's the fantasy running back too over the past month. Is that correct?
I think it's since week 7. Yeah, he
Since
is
week
he is
7.
the
Okay.
since week 7.
Yeah.
So back to the season, it's been all him.
Now, if you were patient early in the season when he was not getting his touchdowns, you traded for Josh Jacobs, you believed in the talent and the player and the role on the Green Bay Packers. Congratulations. He could be a league winner for you. Then for the Dolphins, same deal with the weather, right? The Tua, Hill, and Waddle tricky decision is all just because of that. Especially with Tua, we've seen Tua in these cold weather games not look right. This Dolphins team does not travel to the cold very well. I mean, you guys all saw the playoff game against the Chiefs last year. The offense froze. They just kind of aren't a team that's built for this type of tough scenario game. So that's why we're tricky decisioning them. Hill and Waddle are just so reliant on Tua being able to get them the ball that if the offense is frozen, then we think that they probably won't have great games. I get that Jalen Waddle got you there last week. It was the week everyone was kind of waiting for him. Tyreek Hill had a disappointing one, but it was in line with his other matchups of Christian Gonzalez. It's just, hey, like look at your roster, make an informed decision. Like say for example, I had Lad McConkey on my bench or JSN, I would probably start them over Tyreek Hill this week. Then Achane and Johnny Smith. Johnny Smith has just continued to get targets. We think that he will be the easy over the middle kind of guy getting peppered with the easy stuff. I think the Dolphins will be trying to look for easy stuff if the weather is bad. Plus, tight end is just a more thin position, right? Johnny Smith has been there. He is a tight end one for us this week. And then Devon Achane. He's getting the touches. That's all you really need to know at this point. He was not efficient on his touches last week, but he got in the end zone twice. He has been getting in the end zone. Listen, if you're a running back in this league and you're going to get the majority of your team's carries, you're going to get 5 or 6 targets out of the backfield, and you're constantly getting in the end zone. I cannot not start you. I've been hearing talk about redraft for next year. Achane being the RB2 overall on the board. Don't do that. Don't do that. It is not that type of player, but right now the usage is there that we feel fine calling him a start. What do you think, Yoni?
I'm gonna be sad if that happens because that means I'll never have another A-chain share again. Bad weather, but not the same type. I think we crossed up a little bit. So 20 to 30 mile an hour temperature with a wind chill down as low as 16. I just saw in the weather report. So it's a frozen game, but it looks like it's like 10 mile an hour winds, no snow as of now for the weather report. But like, dude, I wouldn't start Tua at all in those conditions. I don't know if it impacts the Packers the same way, but buyer beware on Tyreek Hill and Waddle, man. I just don't know. I don't know what you're going to get in that type of weather. There's a long and established history of how Tua does in freezing temperatures like that. So just behave accordingly. I think the 2 examples Ted gave were perfect. Yeah, I will look for other. I'm trying to think of what direct choices I have. Like I will certainly be starting Marvin Harrison Jr. and George Pickens over Waddle in one of my leagues. I will be starting Bucky Irving over Tyreek Hill in one of my leagues at the flex.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Just based on what you said, right? If it's profiling to be a snow game with only 10 miles an hour wind. I think that profile is actually better for the Packers pass catchers. I think we saw last week in the Snow Bowl between the Browns and the Steelers, right? It
I don't
affects
even know if
both.
it's snow. I don't even know if it's snow. I just think it's going to be freezing. So it's going to be like throwing a
Oh,
rock.
okay.
It's going to be throwing a rock ball on the tundra. You know, the ice gets frozen though. Like that, dude. That to me, the speed. Like all the Dolphins players are really speed built, and that really negates a lot of it. Dude, they're going to be like penguins. Ironically, Waddle's going to be like a penguin out there. You know, so I don't know. I don't. I mean, you feel free to share what you think. I personally, I just
if
don't like.
if there
I
was
don't like
snow on the ground, I would start Christian Watson over Jalen Waddle in this one, like just in the game, right? Well, when it's a snowing game, right? The at least the traditional, I guess, thought about this is that it's bad for both offenses. That's not always the case. When you're playing defense, right, you have to react to a wide receiver running around and making cuts. That is more difficult in the snow. There's a famous gambling term called the snover, where a lot of times the bettors see that it's going to be a snow game where there's not just insane winds going around. They will bet the over. I wouldn't do that on a 47 and a half total. I think that's a little insane, but I think that Jordan Love and the Packers might have more success if it's not a super windy one. So
yeah.
the Dolphins, I think, are still going to get frozen into popsicles here, but
Yeah.
might be a good spot to bet the Packers 3.5, honestly.
I think you'll be seeing that on my picks. Okay, Raiders 15-point implied team total going to the Kansas City Chiefs with a 27.5 implied team total. Raiders with their, even though he's already started this year, their third quarterback that's gotten playing time this year. It's really, really a mess over there. It looks like it's going to be O'Connell, possibly Desmond Ritter. I don't feel great either way. But I think with the Raiders, we do have a pretty clear case of a concentrated offense, which we like. Every week we've told you guys, if you want to start Bowers, if you want to start Myers, I think those are perfectly reasonable starts. Productive players, they get a really high target share, they get a really nice just volume. Especially in full PPR. And again, Bowers needs no explanation. That's more of a Myers defense there, right? Abdullah, I'm going to say if both running backs miss, which as of today, it was Zamir White not participating in practice, Alexander Madison limited. If Alexander Madison goes, I would probably just not touch the running backs here, to be honest with you, unless you're going to go for a cheap DFS dart throw, in which case I prefer to play Abdullah because he's going to get the check down work. But if the two running backs were to miss, I actually think Abdullah's a start. They were totally comfortable dumping the ball off to him. They were giving him work last week. He got the touchdown. I streamed him in 2 leagues for 15.1 half PPR points. Totally comfortable. It's really funny, dude. I've been dumpster diving all year with these Raiders running backs. Like I've had to spot start Madison in my flex a few times this year. I've had to spot start Amir Abdullah a few times this year, and they've actually pulled through for me. So maybe I'm a little bit biased in saying that. Maybe this is a pretty bad matchup, but I do think in full PPR, Abdullah will get you there as so long as White and Madison are out. It looks like Madison may go this week, in which case I would probably avoid him, but I did just want to flag that you get him in, especially on DFS. He should still be priced at almost nothing, even if Madison is out. I would just keep an eye on that as the week progresses. For the Chiefs, Mahomes, Kelsey, Pacheco, I believe will be back this week. I would be shocked if he wasn't. He's been so close the last 2 weeks. I think they just didn't rush him because they felt like they didn't need him, and it turns out it almost cost them the game against the Panthers. Who would have thought? But it looks like Pacheco will be back this week. Probably will split work with Hunt. I would be shocked if they phased Hunt out all the way. At the minimum, I would say it's like a 60-40 split. I would be shocked even if it was 70-30 because it's his first game back. He broke his leg. They need him for the playoffs. But I still think he's a start. Really soft matchup. I'll throw him in my lineup in my one Pacheco roster. Hopkins, get him in your lineup this week, guys. This is a really nice matchup. I know the Raiders play decent defense from time to time, but I'm starting Hopkins against this team at home. I absolutely am. Little concerning. The target share and the route run rate with him and Juju on the field last week. I was pretty surprised they were giving Juju the work they were when he's just not a very good player. But he was, and it looks like Marquise Brown is back in the next week or two. Maybe we'll reevaluate Hopkins. Maybe we will. But for now, he's going to be a start. You're going to sit Kareem Hunt, even though he, will get some work. I just don't want to roll him out there when he's potentially splitting work with Pacheco. And I think the Raiders should have no problem moving the ball through the air here. So we're going to call him a sit. Sort of tricky decision worthy. Really probably more of a DFS. He's a lot closer to a sit for me than a start. And I would hope with no buys this week, you're not looking at starting him. But, he's had a few really big plays that he either just missed or just stepped out of bounds from the end zone. I don't hate it if you're going to throw him in your lineup. I would just probably rather not. Yeah, that's all I got. Not a whole lot to say about this one.
Yeah, I didn't really have much either. Bummer to see Gardner Minshew go down with his broken collarbone. Get away from that organization, Gardner. Don't ever look back. If you want to be a backup for the San Francisco 49ers, we will welcome you with open arms, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, next you got the LA Chargers going into Atlanta to play the Falcons. The Chargers have an implied team total of 24.5 points. The Falcons have an implied team total of 23 points. For the Chargers, we are starting Justin Herbert, Will Dissly, whatever running back goes, and Lad McConkey. Then we're going to sit Jordan Palmer, Quentin Johnston, and then the Gus Bus if Dobbins plays. Then for the Falcons, we're going to start Bijan and Drake London. We're going to sit Tyler Algier. Then we're going to tricky decision Kirk Cousins, Kyle Pitts, and Darnell Mooney. Let's start with the Falcons first because I think this is more standard, right? I think this Chargers defense got exposed a little bit on Monday night. They were averaging like 14 points allowed or something insane. To like I guess through 11 weeks of the season. The Ravens hung 30 on them. The fact of the matter is, I think this Chargers team is playing well, or I guess their defense is playing well, and they are well coached. To me, it just feels like they're just missing. I think a couple drafts will help them. So we really only have like the standard Falcon starters, right? The Bijan, Drake London, every week starters. Tyler Algier is going to be a sit. We only like Tyler Algier in like those blowout spots where we think the Falcons might boat race a team and Algier might get some carries at the end. He does get some work, but it's more like to me it's more like Brees Hall, Braylon Allen type of deal, you know. Then we're going to tricky decision Cousins, Pitts, and Mooney just based on the fact that yeah, this Chargers defense has been playing well. I get that the Ravens kind of beat them up last week, but I think this Falcons offense, even though they have talent in places there, they have talent at the skill positions. Kirk just seems like he's not the Kirk Cousins that we've seen before. It's hard to trust him, I think, in this spot. So tricky decision to all those guys. For the Chargers, listen, that I think over the past 3 weeks, this passing offense has really picked it up. I think that we can finally say with relatively full confidence here that Justin Herbert is finally healthy, and we're seeing what he's doing with like basically Lad and a bunch of Dick's Sporting Goods associates. So we are going to start Justin Herbert regardless in this soft matchup. We are going to start Will Dissly, who has turned out to be kind of like his second favorite target. And we're going to start Lad McConkey, who is an absolute beast. I love the kid. My only complaint about Lad McConkey is I wish they would throw him the ball more. Whenever Lad McConkey gets thrown the ball, it's a first down and like a chunk gain of 15 to 20 yards. I hope they keep looking his way. Same with whatever running back is going to be starting here. This Falcons team has been hemorrhaging yards to the running game. We like it the best if J.K. Dobbins goes, right? If J.K. misses, then Gus Bus would be fine. I don't think Gus Bus is a particularly dynamic player at this point in his career.
No.
But when you are in a Greg Roman offense, Jim Harbaugh loves to establish it too, right? I would assume that whoever the starting running back is falls in the end zone one or two times here, should have a decent game, even if they're not the most dynamic player. And then we're just sitting the extra pieces of the Chargers passing offense in Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston just because he sucks at football, and Josh Palmer because we think this is a Chargers get up and run the ball down your throat type of game. They're not going to be like pass funneled like the Chargers have been the past 2 weeks with the Bengals and the Ravens. And then Gus Bus, if Dobbins goes, it's just like, do you really want 30% of the backfield with a not very dynamic running back, right? I think the Gus Bus play is really only if he is getting feature back type of usage. What do you think, Yanni? Did I get everything?
Yeah, you got everything, man. I'm shocked to say that as of right now, Lad McConkey is leading the rookie receiver class in production this year. I believe both in touchdowns and yards, and possibly in receptions.
He's
So
actually
I
second in yards, I think. Number one's
know.
Brock Bowers, isn't it?
Maybe. Well, okay, the rookie receiving class, because I did see him against the other big three receivers, and he is number one. I believe he had like 649. The closest was 629 behind him. I was shocked. No, that's it though, man. Great job.
Shout out Ryan Evans. He kind of gave me that stat on Twitter.
There you go. Okay, Colts and Patriots. One I've kind of got my eye on just because I like the young guys in this game. Colts 22.5 implied team total at the Patriots 20-point implied team total. Patriots getting a little bit of respect though. 20 points, not terrible considering they have not had a great year offensively. Anthony Richardson's going to be a start for us. I know that's a little bit controversial, maybe. He had a few just plays that were an inch away last week from him having another really nice week. We know the upside's there. We saw what I would call maybe not an explosion week, but a nice high-end week. I believe he had 28 the week before against the Jets. And look, I think he has I think this week, especially considering, pretty good coverage unit in the Patriots. But look, I don't know what's going on with the Patriots. When you have your coach saying something as stupid as once they get beyond that white line, I have no control over what happens. Their head coach said that this week is I control things outside of the field, but once they get on that field, that is way beyond me. Dude, I don't feel good about the kind of disarray they're in. And it feels like Anthony Richardson has momentum. I like starting Richardson this week. I like starting Downs this week with the assumption that Pittman's going to draw the Christian Gonzalez matchup. I actually think it might be a really nice Downs week if Anthony hits him, right? Sometimes he's liable to miss those deep shots, but if he hits him, man, I love Richard Downs this week. He had already a couple nice weeks with Richardson the last 2 or 3 times they played. Jonathan Taylor, get him in there. Good start. I know he's been catching a little flack on Twitter for a couple down weeks. I think he bounces back in a big way this week. And then I want to sit Pittman. I want to sit Pierce, particularly Pittman. I have no interest in taking the Christian Gonzalez matchup with Pittman this week. Christian Gonzalez just eats wide receiver ones alive. Not always, but for the most part, in a big body one like that, when Christian's bigger and faster than him, yeah, man, I don't want that. Patriots, a little bit, I don't know. Is it controversial or is it being a little bullish? I'm very bullish on Drake May this week. We're very bullish on Drake May this week. Probably Ted a little bit less so than I am. I know he hasn't had a 20-point week, and I believe since his first 2 starts, he went back-to-back 20-point weeks and has dropped off. I like his odds to get there this week. I especially like him, if he's going to be reasonably priced on DraftKings. Maybe me and Ted feel a little bit differently about this. He feels like the Colts defense has picked it up the last few weeks, which I actually think they have. They've had a few strong showings. I just think all in all, it's still a not very talented defense. I think it's still an exploitable defense. I like May and Stevenson as starts this week. Henry and Douglas are going to be tricky decisions. Again, maybe I'm being prematurely bullish. Douglas has been getting enough volume. I actually think I like Pop Douglas to get his first touchdown this week. It may be a roster configuration I try with May and Douglas stack, but I mean, he's had like between 7 and 9 half PPR points for the last month. Can't call him a start. In redraft, I hope you have better options. And even the same thing for Henry. I hope you have better options at this point. So they're both going to be tricky decisions for us. I think for almost everyone's roster, they're going to be closer to sits. And yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, I mean for Drake May, right? For me, he's more of like a tricky decision because for me, like if we're going to call someone who's not like one of the obvious calls to start, like to me that means like top 12. I don't know if I see it against this Colts defense that they only allowed like 21 or 24 points to the Lions, like a very strong showing out of them. Zaire Franklin's been playing really good. EJ Speed has been playing well. Having Kenny Moore back in the lineup, DeForest Buckner has helped this Colts team. I think they still don't have the best defense in the world. Gus Bradley calls a lot of soft zone. We'll see if Drake May takes advantage of that. I think that he's the most likely guy to get it going. I like Drake May more than Ramondre Stevenson, even in this spot, but that's fine. And then for the Colts, Anthony Richardson, I get that if you look at the box score last week, it was another sub 500 completion percentage type of week, but he had about 100 yards and a touchdown wiped off the board from either wide receiver drops, not getting their feet in bounds. There was I think it was like a 40-yard pass to Ashton Doolin where he clearly could have got his left foot in, just kind of a young guy mistake. He didn't really think about it, got stepped out of bounds, and then penalties. So listen, man, this Patriots team, I get that they've played good defensive points this year, but they are not the Detroit Lions defense. I think this is a 20-plus point game from old Anthony Richardson. Yeah, that's really all I have. Just had to glaze AR a little bit.
Who did he miss the big crosser over the middle to, right? From like his own, 15 or something like that. He should have had one of the highlight throws of the week on that big crosser. went off his fingertips. I think it was Alec Pierce.
Next, we got the Texans going into Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. The Texans have an implied team total of 24 points, and the Jaguars have an implied team total of 19.5 points. For the Texans, we're starting C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Joe Mixon, and we're going to tricky decision Dr. Schultz. Then for the Jaguars, we are conditionally starting Brian Thomas Jr. and Evan Ingram. We're going to go ahead and sit Travis Etienne. And then we're going to conditionally tricky decision Trevor Lawrence. And let's start there with this Jaguars team. Trevor practiced on Monday, which is good news. At least early reports, like I think maybe starting last week, were that Trevor might be out for the season. It looks to me like the Jaguars are going to try and get him back out there. And if he is out there, this Texans team has surrendered a ton of yards in the passing game to just Cooper Rush and Will Levis. Say what you want about Trevor Lawrence and his season this year. I think that he is still a better quarterback than Cooper Rush and Bill Levis. And I don't hate his chances here. I really don't. And if you like his chances to have a decent day in the air passing, then Brian Thomas Jr. to me is back in that flex to wide receiver 2 conversation, and Evan Ingram is looking to be a target monster at the tight end position that is desperately in need of one, right? We're sitting ETN here for a couple reasons. One of which is that he has not been over double digits since week 1, so the production has been horrible. And number 2 is we've seen this Texans team play good defense against running backs, right? It was not a great week against Tony Pollard and the Titans last week, but we saw them just absolutely stuff the Lions and stuff the Cowboys. So I think that they're going to come out and play some good run defense here. There is an argument to be made. Oh well, Travis Etienne, he is a good catcher of the football, right? He might get you there on the targets. I mean, you can do it if you want to, but I don't see why this would be the week that things really drastically change for him, other than him just being healthy and having Trevor, right? For the Texans, this Jaguars team has been so terrible, so terrible in pass defense that it's a no doubter for me on Stroud and Collins. I think those two are going to be smash starts this week. I think I would love to take a look at like how many quarterbacks have dropped 30 burgers on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know it's been a lot. They have just been hemorrhaging points. It's funny. They're like a super undermanned defense that like plays man and refuses to not play man. So when you do that and you have a physical freak like Nico Collins out there and CJ Stroud who's going to be looking for him, I think Nico
Yep.
Collins might be my wide receiver 1 on the week, to be completely honest with you. I love the spot for him. Same with Tank Dell. He's just been getting consistent work since Diggs went out, right? Like, I think that he's a fine enough player as long as he's getting looks in an offense that's going to have success passing the ball that is attached to CJ Stroud. I like his chances. Then Joe Mixon. It was a tough one for him last week. I think that was an emphasis of the Titans' game plan was to try and stop the run because he's kind of been the engine of the offense. I don't think this Jaguars team could do that if they tried. Even if they tried to game plan to stop Mixon, I don't think it's going to happen. I get that the Texans O line has not been great this year. We're willing to chalk that Mixon performance up last week to more of an anomaly than anything else. And then Dr. Schultz, tricky decision. This is more so that we think this is a massive boom week for the Texans and throwing the ball. He could get targeted. It's funny how Diggs being out of the lineup has just drastically improved, specifically Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz's fantasy value, and John Mechie too in certain spots. But yeah, I think you could do it if you have an injury or bye at tight end. Dr. Schultz would not be the worst. What do you think, Yanni?
Nothing to say. Straightforward game, in my opinion.
You think CJ goes over 20 points this week for fantasy?
Yeah, I'd like him to do it this week. I mean, the only way he doesn't is if Mixon rushes and like 2 touchdowns. But especially if Trevor plays, it's a home game for the Jags. Maybe it's a little bit of a pride game, and he's forcing him to pass. I don't see how he doesn't. Yeah.
I saw our favorite fantasy analyst, David Guattari, aka Bowser Guy, was victory lapping this week about not drafting CJ Stroud. Say what you want about CJ as a fantasy asset. Dude is still an absolute baller. I get that it's been rough for him the past couple weeks. I can't help but think he's going to turn it around here. And this is going to be like the perfect get right spot for him.
Yeah, I think it's just lesson learned, man. Draft guys with rushing upside if you're going to draft high. It's not that he's the wrong player or a bad player. You just paid the wrong price for him, right? Okay, like you could get similar production from Geno Smith, who's right here for us, right? Seahawks 21.5 implied team total at the Jets, 20-point implied team total. Seahawks favored on the road in New York, man. For the Seahawks, look, this offense has been totally productive, and whenever they have had to score points, they've been willing to. They've let Geno throw 30 to 40 times. Kenneth Walker III's been absolutely balling. The more interesting note to me here, so we have Kenneth Walker III and Geno as starts. I think that's perfectly reasonable, especially Geno's like on my 2 QB rosters, right, where I'm rotating him in and out. I like Geno in a matchup like this. I had initially had him as a tricky decision. Ted goes, no, he's a starter. I was like, yeah, some people may have choices, but I think he probably slides into low end QB1 territory this week. The more interesting thing has been since DK got hurt, and it doesn't look like he's still unhealthy to me, JSN has clearly been their wide receiver one. I believe JSN is 5th or 6th on the year in receptions. He's top 10 in targets. He has been like a top 12 quarterback since DK went down. It's probably a little higher than that. I didn't actually check before this. To me, JSN is a locked-in weekly start. What I'm interested to see is what does Debo do this week? He will probably draw the Sauce Gardner matchup. And does that mean that DK draws Sauce Gardner and it's another JSN week? I don't, I'm starting them both this week. I hope for the fantasy playoffs to start them both, right? Wherever I have to. I have 2 of them in one league, 2 of them in another, right? 2 shares of DK, 2 shares of JSN. I just think it's interesting to watch, man. JSN is breaking out in a way that's like destroying DK's value the last 2 weeks. We'll see if it keeps up. We're going to call him a start this week, though. And also, we told you guys about a month ago, try to go get JSN, try to grab him off. He was on wires or waivers in some leagues. He was basically free in trades for some leagues. We told you guys that if you were to take the Lockett role, you may have a high-end wide receiver 2 on your hands, and it looks like that's what's happened. We're going to sit Lockett because JSN's absorbing too much of his work. He's simply not startable right now. For the Jets, you're starting Hall, you're starting Wilson, you're starting Adams. Adams is the sketchiest one of that group. Hall and Wilson, you're starting every week. But I do like Adams this week, especially in a game where they should have a negative game script. Should be plenty of passing volume to go around. I don't hate his odds of getting in the end zone this week. Sort of tricky decision, Aaron. I'd rather not start Aaron Rodgers. There's no teams on bye. You really should have better options. But if you're going to go stream someone off the waiver wire, if you're going to try for a cheaper DFS start throw, I mean, the Seahawks do let teams pass around on them. Although for the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've been playing much better defense. Aaron is much closer to a sit for me than a tricky decision.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
I think I must have just missed Aaron on the slides. He's a sit for me. Like full blown, do not do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, this Seahawks team, I have loved to just drop the elbow on them from the top rope all year, calling them a terrible defense, saying all the bad things in the world about this defensive unit. Last 3 weeks, they had a run against the LA Rams, 49ers, and Arizona Cardinals, where they have kept all teams under at 20 points or under in regulation. They just held James Conner under 10 yards rushing in a rain game. I don't know what that is, but if that's the case, the Seahawks defense might be good. Unfortunately, I have to say that, and that makes me think Adams might be a tough one here. But I guess in theory he'd be getting work. Then for the Seahawks, right? I do want to challenge this Ken Walker has been balling out thing. I don't think he has been balling out. He's still a good player, but his line just loses constantly, and he has nowhere to run. It's not a Ken Walker issue. It's a Seattle Seahawks have like a bottom 3 line in the league issue. That's not to say that he won't have success here, but I have him as an RB2 this week probably. And then with JSN and Lockett, JSN's here to stay. I think the Seahawks have finally stopped messing around with Tyler Lockett randomly being the wide receiver 2. I think they've seen JSN is more than capable enough to be the wide receiver 2 or potentially 1 on the Seahawks team. So to me, he's a high-end wide receiver 2 going forward. He leads the Seahawks in receiving yards this year and receptions. Like he's been the wide receiver 1 on his own team over DK. That's not to say that's where the Seahawks have him, but just from a production standpoint, you would rather have JSN than DK so far this year. All right, next we got my favorite team, my absolute favorite team, AFC North leading Pittsburgh Steelers, going into Cincinnati to play the down bad 4-7 Bengals. surely they won't lose this game, right? It seems very weird to me that an 8-3 team is 2-point underdogs at a 4-7 team, but here we are. The Steelers with an implied team total of 22 points, the Bengals with an implied team total of 24.5 points. For the Steelers, we are going to start George Pickens, and we're going to tricky decision everyone else there is. Then for the Bengals, we're going to start Joe Burrow, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, and we're going to sit Mike Gesicki. We'll start with the Bengals. I feel like this is more standard, right? Gesicki, it was a nice thought. I think that if T. Higgins is in the lineup, though, you just need to flag that Gesicki will not be relevant in a week. If T. Higgins ever misses a game, I think Gesicki makes his way towards the tricky decision. But if you see Higgins is playing, no thank you on that. I believe he wasn't even on the field for like 50% of the snaps in the game against the Chargers. I believe his name was like Tanner Hudson or something was getting work. A tight end, I think Drew Sample had a couple more snaps than Gesicki. It's just it's a weird mess there that you have to like look for specific things before you can even think about starting the Bengals tight ends. But other than that, man, it's a nice and condensed offense in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow playing at an MVP type level. Jamar Chase, I think, is making an argument to being the best wide receiver in the league this year. I know that him and Justin Jefferson are having a little bit of a duel here as to who is better. They're kind of going back and forth with their contracts, right? Like Chase, he wouldn't re-sign with the Bengals because he wanted to be making at least more than Justin Jefferson was making. I think he's winning this year. He definitely has the better quarterback, and he's playing. Chase Brown has been an absolute bell cow since Zach Moss has gone down. The Bengals traded for Khalil Herbert, but I guess they just have no interest in playing him. That's fine though. Chase Brown has been more than capable of carrying the load. He's averaging like I think 7 or 8 targets a game. He's getting like Kamara passing game usage with like 20 plus carries a game. I get that the Steelers matchup is not ideal. I think they're like, as of last week, they were fourth against the run. I would assume they're probably hanging around there. So it's a top 5 team at defending the run, but I think that Chase Brown is matchup proof until proven otherwise. And then T. Higgins, he's a baller, man. As long as he's not injured, he is still a very, very good player. I feel like do I really feel like I missed one not drafting T. Higgins? I feel like my evaluation of him coming into the year was that he was a little bit overrated and not as good as people thought he was. I think I was wrong about that. I think he's a baller that just it's injury, right? And I'll be interested to see where he goes next year. I think the New York Giants, but we'll see. As for our friends, the Pittsburgh Steelers, tough coming off a tough loss against the Browns in the Snow Bowl. We're going to start George Pickens. He's a very talented guy. He's getting the looks. He's the only wide receiver I think that like should probably be on the field for a NFL team. It's very condensed, right? The Steelers team, they're going to have to throw the ball in this one. I think the Bengals are going to score points. I don't think this is going to be like the Lamar Jackson game where the Steelers somehow won with 6 field goals. I think this Bengals offense is too good and they will score, especially in the air. And the Bengals have been playing sneaky good rush defense. So, based on that, I think that if the Steelers want to keep up in this game, you attack the Bengals in the air. I think that's what they're going to have to do. So, that's why Pickens is the only start. Everyone else is a tricky decision, though. The theory of the pass funnel defense is there for Russell Wilson. It's just Russell Wilson, the player, right? Like I believe he's only been over 20 fantasy points once since he took over as the starter. Whether or not he's playing better than last year, I think is still even up for debate. But this is a team in the Pittsburgh Steelers that just is undertooled on offense, and I think it's fair to say that Russ has lost a step. Is he the best quarterback specifically for the Pittsburgh Steelers to win games? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not super on one side of the fence or the other on that. But in terms of a fantasy option, I think you can do better. Same with Najee and Jalen Warren. I believe last week Jalen Warren outscored Najee. Like we said, this Bengals defense, they have been playing really, really good, at least really solid rush defense. I think they held like J.K. Dobbins to like 40 yards until he broke off the run on the last play of the game. The theory here is right. I get that Najee has been good for you this year. I get that he's been RB2 and getting really good usage, but the Steelers are starting to run Jalen Warren a little bit more. It's starting to be like 70-30, 60-40 in favor of Najee. We don't think the player is very dynamic, right? You're telling me that we have a running back who we don't think is like explosive or a very good running back going against a team that's playing really good rush defense and he's not getting bell cow usage. That's just not a start to me. I think you can think about a flex, like depending on what your other options are, but he's probably like in between running back 15 to 20 for me this week. I don't love the start. Same with Jalen Warren, right? Like he may be a little bit more explosive, but it's not a very good offense. He's only getting on the field 40% of the time. I get that he got in the end zone last week. You could start him with the hopes that he gets his like 7 to 8 point floor and maybe he falls in the end zone. But I think, again, you could do better this week. I probably prefer Najee to Warren in a vacuum, but don't love either of them. Then same with the Muth. The volume just hasn't really been there, right? Like he's a big guy. He could get in the end zone, but I don't feel great like telling you to start a tight end attached to Russell Wilson that hasn't been getting crazy volume this year. That's where I'm at. Was I too negative about the Steelers, Yanni, or do you think that was fair?
No, I mean, I didn't even really think there was that much to say about him. I would just rather avoid everyone but Pickens in the lineup. I see Russ rostered in a lot of leagues. Like, I think Najee's more of an emergency start, even though he's actually been really good 5 of the last 6 weeks. I think as they head into this part of their schedule, like I'm just going to be avoiding Najee in my lineups. And look, if they fall behind early, it will be a game where Jalen Warren outscores Najee again, especially in full PPR.
Yeah.
So plan accordingly. Plan accordingly.
If there's
I
one
think you.
thing, if there's one thing you got to know about me, it's even when you think there's not a lot of things I have to say about the Steelers, I will have a lot of things to say about that organization.
Yeah, I would just say going forward, right? Roster Warren, roster Najee, but treat them as emergency starts. If you have, 2 or 3 guys on bye or 2 or 3 injuries and they need to go, they'll get enough touches, right? There's potential there. I just don't feel great about either one rest of season. Really tough running back schedule for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Titans with an implied team total of 19. Going to the Redskins with an implied team total of 24.5. Interesting news articles this week about them bringing back the Redskins name, by the way. We were so right about that. It's not even funny. To me, it sounded like they're going to revert back to it. I was reading an article on Fox about it. Okay. So this is, I guess, sort of controversial. Will Levis. He has had, I believe it's like 19, 18, and 17 or 19, 16, 17 the last 3 weeks. He's actually been playing pretty good football after his benching. He's been keeping the team afloat. He's been making plays, a little bit of rushing upside. Ted may not be so bullish on him this week. I actually think he's a flat out start for me. I'm looking at rosters with, I have a Jared Goff roster and I have a Brock Purdy roster. And when I hear 30 to 40 mile an hour winds in the snow, I'm looking long and hard about, do I want to stream Will Levis this week over guys like that? And I may end up going for it. So to me, he's a flat out start. He's going to have to pass the ball a lot. He's played good football the last few weeks. Been just under 300 yards, and 2 of the games are between 250 and 300 yards. And 2 of the games only had 175, but had like 40 yards on the ground in the other game. I think he's been really productive, man. I love what I'm seeing out of Levis the last few weeks. Pencil him in for a stupid turnover or 2, but yeah, it's going to happen. That's just part of the Will Levis experience. Ridley and Pollard. Pollard finally bounced back last week after a few weeks of being down. I like him here. I don't know if I love him here, right? I don't think they're going to have a lead and sit there and grind out the clock, but I certainly like his odds to get in the end zone at some point here today. And then Ridley. Ridley has been on fire. Ridley's been an excellent start. He's been one of the best receivers in football since Hopkins was traded. Again, your roster would have to be pretty loaded to not get him in there. I have 2 Ridley rosters, and it's actually really bizarre that I can't fit him in there at the moment, but I can. And then Spears. Even if Spears gets back, I don't have any interest in starting Spears. Although hypothetically the game script does favor him here, I'm not going to be plugging him in my lineup in redraft. To me, Spears is just a fancy handcuff. He's a handcuff with really nice upside. Keep him on your roster. Don't put him in it. For the Redskins, Daniels, we checked before this game, currently the number 5 overall scoring player in fantasy and half PPR. Boosted a little bit from the bounce back week. He had actually had a few down weeks. He's playing a tough defense this week, and a lot of his points came in what was sort of garbage time last week. So I don't I don't feel as bullish about him as I did after the first month of the season, sure. But could I pull him out of my lineups at this point? Absolutely not. I have Jaden Daniels on 60% of my rosters in fantasy right now. I have him backed up by different quarterbacks because I'm worried about injury. So I have a couple Geno Smith backups on him. I have Bo Nix backup on him. I have a Drake May backup on him, and a Jared Goff backup on him. Am I going to start any of those guys over Daniels? No. Do I think he quite has a massive ceiling week this week? Probably not. The Titans play pretty good defense, and they actually do have some mobile quarterback play on their practice squad. So they probably will come in pretty well prepared, dude. They've been pretty defensively sound really for like a decade now. Ertz is awesome, man. I think that's a startable tight end. I think he's someone you probably want to be getting in your lineup as much as you can. RB1's going to be whoever's healthy. Eckler's in concussion protocol. Looked like a high ankle for Brian Robinson to me. McNichols has been good this week or this year when he's had to go. I think you can start him, especially if those two guys are out. If Eckler misses but Robinson goes, I think you have to start him even with the injury. If Robinson misses and Eckler goes, you have to start him. It's just going to depend who's there. And then Terry, still going to call Terry a start. I don't know if L'Jarius Sneed is going this week. I know he went down last week. I don't think he went to the IR. I don't remember. Probably should have looked that up, but I don't have it off the top of my head. But still, I find it really hard to bench Terry right now. You would have to have a really damn good roster if you're looking at benching Terry McLaurin. And then other wide receivers are going to be your sits. I don't have any interest in any of them, and neither should you. That's what I've got.
Yeah. Let's touch on the Redskins here for a bit. Listen, I think that there is a story brewing right now. About this Redskins kind of offense just not looking right. This team, the Redskins team that had looked like one of the most dynamic offenses in the league at points this year. They had only scored 9 points against the Dallas Cowboys deep into the fourth quarter. I believe like Jaden Daniels is like in a sub 10 point fantasy game like with 4 minutes left to play in the fourth quarter. That game got absolutely insane. That was one of the more crazy 4 minutes of football I've ever seen in my life. Listen, man, I'm fine calling Jaden Daniels a start here because of the rushing upside that he offers. Like we've said, like we just love to say on this channel, that is the king. Rushing upside is king. Even if you are struggling throwing the ball, the rushing upside can get you there. So I think that's fine. But I'm terrified of your Terry McLaurin shares. Last week, before he broke off an 87-yard touchdown with 30 seconds left in the game, he had 3 catches for like 20 yards. The week before in Philly, he had 1 catch for 11 yards. If this Redskins team, if the offense does not look right, and they're not pushing the ball down the field, Terry is not a volume play. He is a value play on these deep shots. I believe he's fourth in the league in receiving yards this year with like 20 less catches than the next guy. I believe he has more receiving yards and less catches than George Pickens. He is making his hay on these long throws. If it's not there for him, though, he's liable to give you those 2 or 3 point weeks that can just kill you in fantasy. I think I have Terry as a wide receiver 2 this week. Depending on your roster, I do not hate sitting him this week. Just in this game, I would start Calvin Ridley over Terry McLaurin. And that's not to say that I think that Calvin Ridley's a better player than Terry or in a better position. I just think that Ridley's role is way more solid than Terry's at this point in time. And then, yeah, I guess just Tajay Spears, to your point, I think you put it perfectly, right? Fancy handcuff. And Will Levis, like, you're a little bit more bullish than on him than me. I do think that anywhere from 15 to 20 points is the most likely range of outcomes for him. It's not that I dislike him. It's just that I don't see like a boom week. You know what I mean? Like Jaden Daniels, like even though he played terribly, 56 out of 60 minutes on Sunday against the Cowboys, he still got you a boom week. I think that if Bill Levis plays well, it's never a boom week at this point. But yeah, that's just all I have on that. A lot of words to say I'm worried about the Redskins. We will see how their offense looks. All right, next we got the Cardinals. You guys cost me $1,500 last week. Thanks for that. Going to Minnesota to play the Vikings. It was a 3-leg parlay. We hit the Bucks and Baker. We hit the Eagles against the Rams. Cardinals let me down in a money line against the Seahawks. Cannot believe it. But yeah, the Cardinals have an applied team total of 20.5 points here. The Vikings have an applied team total of 24 points. For the Cardinals, we're starting Kyler, Marvin Harrison, James Conner, and Trey McBride. Then we're going to sit Michael Wilson in the human Dortch. And then for the Vikings, we're going to start Sam Darnold, TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, and Aaron Jones. And we're going to tricky decision Jordan Addison. So we'll start with the Vikings here first. I think they went up against what we can pretty confidently say is a pretty damn good defense last week, and the passing options other than Justin Jefferson got you there. Darnold had over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jordan Addison just had one of the best games of his career, I think. Best games of his young career. So many long, just game-breaking touchdowns. It was awesome. TJ Hawkinson has consistently been a target monster for you. And Aaron Jones ran wild on the Bears. So here's the deal. We view this Cardinals team as a well-schemed but undermanned squad. Because we're not thinking that they are a amazing defense, we think it's okay to start Sam Darnold here. I think Sam Darnold is more a subpar to game manager type quarterback. If you watch the quarterback tier list, you'll see we had him pretty low in terms of where the consensus is on him, I think. But I feel fine with the weapons around him firing up here against this Cardinals defense. Same with Justin Jefferson. It's been weird. It's been a weird Justin Jefferson year. Like I feel like he is much more talented than his production has been this year. He's been like fairly steady. I believe he was like 14 points or above like every week of the season almost before last week. He had the dud. I know he went to the media and said, "Hey, listen, if it's everybody else eats or Justin Jefferson eats, I'd rather everybody else eat." So he's definitely a team player. He's a good guy. I think that in a locker room like the Vikings, right, with Kevin O'Connell, I think that they're going to want to get him the ball and have a bounce back week. So I like the spot here. This is a defense that's allowed guys like Brandon Ayuk to go for like a buck 50 almost against them, right? They don't have a cover corner here, and you need a cover corner against JJ unless you're going to bracket him. And then Aaron Jones here. I'd say it's like a middle of the road matchup, but he's the bell cow running back in an offense that's pretty good. They should be scoring a lot of points. I think it's fine to start him here. For the Cardinals, it was a rough one against the Seahawks on Sunday. The offense could get absolutely nothing going. They were just completely stymied. They got destroyed by the Seahawks pass rush. I think Leonard Williams had 2.5 sacks. One of the only touchdowns of the game was a pick six on 4th and 1 from Kyler. I get, I get it did not feel good starting him last week. I get that we've seen this Vikings defense play really, really well at points this season. I think Kyler has a good one here, though. Vikings are all zone blitz, right? Maybe that stumps Kyler, but I think he has an opportunity here to have a big game. Plus rushing upside. I have him like middle QB1, probably in between 7 to 10 is where I'd rank him this week. Marvin Harrison Jr., I get that it's been not great, but you just got to be patient with him. I think the talent is all the way there. This Vikings team just allowed a 25-point game to DJ Moore last week. Maybe the Cardinals make it more of an effort to get him the ball. Same with James Conner, held under 10 rush yards last week against the 26th rushing defense in the NFL. That was crazy. I'm willing to call that a complete outlier, though. James Conner is still a very good running back. This Vikings team is actually like, I believe they're like second in the league against the rush. They're a really good rush defense, and that is because they send zone blitz. This might not be a game where James Conner necessarily has a super productive one in between the tackles, but when you're sending zone blitz, if you can beat the first couple of men, there's a lot of room open down the field. I could see James Conner taking a pass out of the backfield, breaking a tackle, and like getting a 40 or 50-yard gain out of it. Still a great player. I have him as a high end RB2 this week. And then Trey McBride. He was the only real Cardinals guy that got it done last week. I think it was 11 catches over 120 yards or something. It's been like one of the most amazing seasons for him. I think he's the tight end 3 in scoring, and he has not scored a touchdown this year. It's one of the more bizarre things I think I've seen. I think he has like 83 targets on the year. He's getting up there with like some of the more inexplicable runs without a touchdown in NFL history. I think Jacoby Myers was up there for a while. Deontay Johnson has the record at like 130 targets or something. We're betting on regression here. He's too good of a player not to get in the end zone. I think his arrow is pointing up in this league, and it's only going to get better. I'm not even going to cover Michael Wilson or the Human Torch. They're just side pieces that you don't really want. What do you think, Yanni?
Yeah, so Marvin Harrison Jr. has been an annoying player to roster this year, right? I actually went and traded for him in a couple places. So still on the player. He's had his up and down weeks. He's basically just switched off week by week, going off, going down, going off, going down. To me, in this game, the Vikings give up the top 10. I believe they're the 9th most points allowed in half PPR to wide receivers. So it is a soft matchup for wide receivers. The only concern that I'm really worried about here is Kyler has done this weird thing, man, where his small frame, I don't know if you saw last week, he took a big hit down in the red zone and like got up all weird. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was inside the
Yep.
10-yard line, running toward the camera, and he got nailed, dude. Like, and he doesn't normally get hit. Like, it looked like a almost cartoon, like where he's being picked up, splattered on the sidewalk or whatever. And I've noticed that the last few years, as those hits accumulate on that size guy, he tends to drop off toward the second half of the season. He'll have these starts of the season. You remember his undefeated run where he looks like he's one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's leading the league in catchable ball rate and deep ball accuracy, all these, flashy metrics, and then it goes away. So to me, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is actually just a matter. I've seen some stuff like he wasn't a real first round talent. That's ridiculous. To me, it's just a matter of can Kyler kind of get back into his rhythm. Kyler's looked really out of rhythm to me. It actually hasn't been Marvin Harrison Jr. in my opinion. And I think if he does this week, we see a nice big Marvin Harrison Jr. week. That's it. That's all that. Okay, man. I've like always loved the Buccaneers, and they're quickly becoming one of my favorite teams to watch in football. Buccaneers with an implied team total of 26.5 on the road against a division opponent at the Panthers. 20 point implied team total for the Panthers. 6.5 on the road in a division game, man. It's a big number. But for the Buccaneers, very easy here. We're going to start everyone. Baker Mayfield has been one of the best quarterbacks in all of fantasy. I hope you went and got him weeks 1 and 2 off the waiver wire when we told you to. He's been doing really well since then. Cade Otton dropped off a little bit with Mike Evans coming back, but I still do believe he's going to be a good fantasy option moving forward. I would be surprised if you have better ones. Maybe if you have like a Tyreek Hill or a Will Disley, even Will Disley's right on that border. I maybe right, Tyreek Hill, Taysom Hill, or a Will Disley, maybe. But for the most part, man, I like Cade. I know he had a down week when Evans was back, but I'm rolling him out there this week with confidence. Mike Evans, no explanation needed. Some back and forth between me and Ted on Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. Bucky Irving, I mean, without a doubt, dude, he came out of this thing looking like they really want to workhorse him here. Was that just a 1-game sample size? Was that the infamous rookie bump that happens after the bye week for rookies? We're not sure. Rachaad White still had 11 points last week, even with Bucky having one of the best, I believe, the best game of his season. So start them both. I think I view White though as more of like a flex with some upside versus I view Bucky as like a locked and loaded running back to rest of season. It's going to be really hard for me. Again, roster dependent. Maybe you guys really killed it in the draft. It's going to be really hard for me to keep Bucky out of my lineups rest of the season. I have a contending roster right now that's making a run, and he will be firmly plugged in as my RB2 rest of season. So start everyone on the Buccaneers. Nice soft defensive matchup. I like the over in this one. For the Panthers, awesome news, ladies and gentlemen. After months of bashing them, 50 episodes where we have done quite a bit of trashing of this gentleman. I have picked against him in our bets. I don't know how many times, but Mr. Bryce Young is going to be a start. Look, I think he's perfectly streamable this week. I think in daily fantasy, if he's the right price, fucking roll him out there, man. He's played really good. Dude, that was like an impressive showing against the Chiefs. I know they lost, but he went in there and went toe-to-toe against Mahomes and the Chiefs in what is technically still must-win territory for the Chiefs. Technically, with one loss on their record, home field advantage is still up for grabs in the AFC. They had their full roster out there, or almost their full roster, I guess, not Pacheco, but like, dude, he went out there and he gave him a run. He's one of 3 quarterbacks to get to 25 points against him this year. His what's it called? All 25, 24 tape, all 32 tape, the non Gamecast tape, right, of him, the scouting tape. Looked excellent, dude. Well, I'll go and watch those dudes on Twitter that do their little breakdowns. Awesome throws. You saw everything that you drafted Bryce Young for in that game. The touch, the pocket presence, the reading, the quick reading of the defense and dropping the ball right where it needs to be. I actually think he does really well this week against the defense that has allowed the most points to fantasy quarterbacks this year. Chuba Hubbard, no explanation needed. You only had 4 Brooks touches. He's not even listed on here because unless they're going to give him more work, he is not a fantasy relevant asset. And then Thielen. I don't know how or why, but Bryce loves Thielen. As far as we know from his time in Carolina, when him and Thielen are on the field together, Thielen's a great start, and I actually like him a lot this week. I think those two might be a really sneaky stack in DFS that I would take a long, hard look at. So those are all your starts. We're going to sit Tommy Tremble. It actually sucks, dude. That kid Sanders, hopefully he's okay. I believe they did say he was okay, but took a brutal fall where his neck whipped around behind his back. He's been really good the last few weeks, and I think he's going to be someone you're going to want to take a look at next year. It's unfortunate he got injured right when he was looking at breaking out alongside Bryce. That's on hold until he's back out there. And then your sort of tricky decisions, Xavier Legette. I actually like the kid a lot. I like the player a lot. I just don't know if you can comfortably start him in redraft right now. I would hope you have better choices on a week with no buys.
I got no additional feedback other than I am so proud of my second team. I get that
Yes.
I love that we both declared our second team this year. Yanni's on the Giants, I'm on the Panthers. I'd imagine it is terrible being a second fan of the New York Giants. I imagine that's like the worst possible thing to be. And I'm just over here
Well,
happy that the Panthers almost beat the Chiefs. Man, I had a bet on that in the gambling show last week. Lost that, of course. But once it became clear that was not coming home bet wise, I was pulling for the Panthers, man. That would have been so sick. Almost a 3-game winning streak and beat the undefeated, or not undefeated, but the defending Super Bowl champs. We'll
dude,
see.
that is such a fun little offense that's brewing over there. You have what appears to be a top 10 O line in the game. You have Brooks that's going to come back next year. Chuba Hubbard that's locked in as one of the what I think is probably one of the 10 or 15 best running backs in the sport right now. Okay, you have Legette, you have Coker. I like Coker. You have Jatavian Sanders, even Adam Thielen is the old man there. If they have another draft or if they go get like a T. Higgins type player to add to this team, that's a legitimate offense next year. What a fun team to be along for the ride for. I'm jealous.
Yeah,
I
man.
think that's a great little rooting interest to have for the next few years. I think it's going to be exciting.
Oh yeah, dude, this is the Dave Canales Bowl. I didn't even think about that, right? This is like Dave Canales' 2 best projects, I think.
Yep.
Turning Baker's career around into him making the top 10 on our quarterback tier list to Bryce Young. I cannot believe this is the same guy that we saw week 1 against the Saints, who could barely complete a pass, had no confidence, everything was within the line of scrimmage. I feel so good for this guy, man, and what a testament to Dave Canales' quarterback whisperer resume. I've never seen anything like what this guy's able to do with these like just career backup like you're
Yep.
bad quarterbacks. Amazing. All right, next we got Jimmy in the LA Rams going into New Orleans to play the Saints. We're starting everyone that's fantasy relevant on the Rams, and for the Saints, we are starting Alvin Kamara, Derek Carr, Taysom Hill, Gross, and we're going to tricky decision MVS. We'll start with the Rams. It's a very concentrated offense going against a defense that has had a down year, fired their coach. I get that the Saints are coming off of a bye, but we don't think it matters here. You're starting Matt Stafford. You're starting Cooper Kupp. You're starting Puka Nakua. You're starting Kyron Williams with full confidence. I've seen a little bit of Kyron hate on Twitter this week. I think this is actually a very interesting thing. I've never loved Kyron Williams, the player. There's been some fumbling. I think he has the most fumbles in the league this year. I get that. It's less so about Kyron Williams, the elite electric running back, and more so about being a bell cow in a Sean McVay offense with Matthew Stafford that's going to move the ball and be in the red area. If the Rams get on the 1 yard line, they will give it to Kyron. He will fall in the end zone. This is a soft matchup. He's still a running back 1 to me this week. For the Saints, this is kind of an interesting one, right? Derek Carr's kind of been the king of the deep ball since he's came back. I don't know. I don't know what happened really. I know that he hits the deep ball from time to time. He usually has a pretty good deep ball, but the amount of just explosives this man has been able to generate on this New Orleans Saints team, it makes no sense to me. We're going to start him here, though. This Rams team, they love to give career fantasy performances out to someone, right? Whether it's surrendering 45 points to Saquon Barkley. I think Jawan Jennings hung a 40 burger on him. Like every week, Jackson Smith-Njigba also had his career game against the Rams. Every week, these LA Rams make a star out of someone on the other team from a fantasy perspective. I don't dislike Carr's chances. Maybe it's a huge Carr week, who knows? But we are definitely starting Kamara as well. When you give up 250 rushing yards to Saquon Barkley, we are going to start you the next week, especially if you're running back like Kamara, who I think is dynamic, right? He's getting up there in age, but I still like the player. Then Taysom Hill, this feels gross. You're starting like a running back to potentially a quarterback in the tight end position. It's nothing more than looking at what this Rams rush defense did last week or didn't do, I guess, and looking at Taysom Hill and saying, there's a good chance he gets in the end zone. Do I think that he should be allowed to start in your tight end position? No, I do not. But if you're serious about winning fantasy, might be a good spot here. He's like on my lower end of tight end ones. He's not like a top end tight end one, but I would start him here. Then same with MVS. If you're feeling lucky with these car explosives, MVS has been the go-to guy. I don't think he's had a better stretch of his career. I mean, I look at the Chiefs; he was kind of an afterthought. You look at the Packers. I know Aaron Rodgers loved MVS, but he never threw him the ball. 2 weeks of like 100 yards. I don't know. You could do worse, especially against this Rams team that loves to make stars. Maybe it's MVS 200-yard receiving game for all I know. What do you think, Yanni?
Just the underrated factor that Carr is a huge bitch and Jimmy Garoppolo is also a huge bitch. So in the practice squad, Jimmy Garoppolo can very effectively imitate Derek Carr's complete flaccid disposition out there. So I think you have to look at the Rams as potentially being a little bit more prepared on defense than the average team for this one. But still, give me all those starts. Give me all those starts.
All right, fair enough.
God, I hate all of them. All right. Baker. The Eagles with an implied team total of 23.75, going to the Ravens with an implied team total of 26.75. I think that spread's really interesting. I think you may be hearing from me and Ted on that later in the week. Devonta Smith recovering from his hamstring. I don't know if he's going to go this week or not. If he does, I cannot leave him on the bench against this type of secondary with this type of negative game script. They might have to pass it 30 or 40 times if need be. I don't know if they will, but it's definitely on the table. Keep an eye on that. If he goes down, I would say Goddard's probably a start. I don't think I can leave Goddard on the bench in that case, but you're locked in guys. Hurts, Saquon, AJ Brown. You are never, ever debating any of those guys. Congratulations if you were sharp enough to draft one of them, if you were sharp enough to understand what the Kellen Moore effect would be on them, if you were sharp enough and brave enough to look at what all of their last years looked like and you saw through it and you went for it. Good for you, man. You're going to enjoy a really nice stretch run here. And I think you will with Devonta Smith too. Before he got hurt, it was in 15-point fantasy games. He was like top 5 this year in 15-point fantasy games. He just got hurt. So it's a bummer because he was actually, I think, a really heady pick in the 4th round too, but he's sort of fallen off a little bit. I love him this week if he goes, though. It sounds like he was maybe close to going last week, so I would expect to see him out there. Goddard's a tricky decision until we hear more about Smith. I think the game script's good enough. I probably just want him out there. He's probably closer to a start for me, but I also, a lot of you guys have 2 QBs, a lot of you guys are 2 tight ends. I'm starting someone like Disley over him for sure this week. I would probably still prefer Kate Otten over him this week, but again, your mileage may vary. Depends what you have on your roster. For the Ravens, again, pretty straightforward, man. You've seen this from us a lot this year, although I guess maybe this one's a little more debatable. As Andrews is going to be a start this week. Lamar, Henry, Flowers. I love them all this week, even with the really tough defensive matchup. And I understand, dude, this Eagles defense is fucking legit. Vic Fangio is absolutely legit. They are putting a beating on teams defensively. But I also think these Ravens have proven going in there and getting in fist fights with the Bengals this year, going in there and fighting the Chiefs tooth and nail, going in there and fighting the Chargers tooth and nail last night, going for it on their own 19-yard line. Dude, the Bengals are just the Ravens are so much fun, man. They are such an aggressive, gritty football team that I think they rise to the occasion when they play these teams. I think their problem this year has been playing down to teams that they really had no business playing down to. I would expect them to fully get up for this one, and I think this will be a really nice Andrews game too, because there should be plenty of passing to go around. I'll leave the sit for last here, but the sort of tricky decision is going to be Bateman. I actually don't hate Bateman in DFS this week. He had the nice long touchdown last week. Again, should have a game script where they're getting all the passing volume in the world. And the bigger point is our sit here is Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson ran 4 routes last week. Dude, 4 routes last week. I believe the week before he ran 5 routes. I think he's run less than 20 routes in total since coming to the Ravens. I don't know why they traded for him. He seems to spend more time laying flat on the turf than he does playing. Like, it seems like every time they throw to him, he's belly down on the ground. I don't know what's going on with that. He's way too talented of a player. I imagine he's upset. I imagine they're upset. I imagine him going on social media to bitch at his new team a week after getting there was not a smart decision. Whatever it is, I think you probably just don't want Deontay Johnson on your roster anymore at this point. If you really want to hold him as a wide receiver handcuff, fine. But in that case, I think that's just a bump to their rushing game and to Zay Flowers, if anything, really, and then Mark Andrews. Like, I don't really think even if Bateman goes down or Zay goes down, I really don't know if they want to give him the kind of run that you would expect. I would probably be dropping him at this point. And that's where I'm at with the game.
Yeah, I have 4 fantasy teams this year. 3 of them drafted Deontay Johnson. I held on all the way until this week.
Yeah.
Listen, boys, the Ravens have a bye next week, right? And then you're in the fantasy playoffs. So really, if you're going to hold on to Deontay Johnson, it would be, well, I think he does well, like in the fantasy playoffs, or I think he has a big game this week. He's not getting on the field for better or worse. It hurts me to say, but drop him. Then for the Eagles, I'm actually really interested to see how they look offensively this game. So far, at least in the NFL, the Eagles have the top rushing attack, and they've attempted the least amount of passes in the entire league. I think it's going to be very interesting to see against this Ravens team that is notoriously very good at stopping the run and just hemorrhages yards in the passing game. If the Eagles try and stick with Saquon and keep giving the ball to Saquon, or if they really do air it out 30 or 40 times like you were suggesting, I think this is an AJ Brown explosion spot. Personally, if the Eagles are going to keep up and be competitive in this game, I think it's going to be the Hurts go balls to AJ Brown. And I think Devontae Smith, he's also a great deep ball runner, right? So I almost like AJ Brown more than Saquon this week. As crazy as that is to say after the massive performance, I think Saquon is he's the premium fantasy asset. I think he's the number 1 overall player in fantasy that you would want on your roster. I wouldn't be surprised to see sub 15 this week, though. As crazy as that seems, it's just stylistically, I think the Ravens match up pretty well to this Eagles team, other than the deep ball. So we'll see. I think this is going to be a fascinating game. May or may not have a pick on it. We will see. All right, next we got our 49ers going into Buffalo to play the Bills. The 49ers have an implied team total of 19 points. The Bills have an implied team total of 25.5 points. I'm going to table the talk about how fucking disappointed I am in this 49ers team and what this season has become for who knows, but this is not the place for it. For the 49ers, we're starting Christian McCaffrey and we're starting George Kittle, and we're going to STD Brock, Deebo Samuel, and Juwan Jennings. Then for the Bills, we're going to start Josh Allen, James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, and Khalil Shakir. We're going to sit Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel, and we're going to tricky decision Amari Cooper. So we'll start with the 49ers first. I feel like that's easier. Right now, this is profiling to be a absolute blizzard. I believe 40 miles an hour and snowing is what the forecast is. So you're going up against a team that is undersized, is built to stop Patrick Mahomes in the passing game, and you're going to have limiting factors like 40-mile-an-hour winds working against you if you are the 49ers. That's why we only have Christian McCaffrey and Kittle as starts. I think the 49ers' best route to success here is going to be hammering the ball in the running game with Christian McCaffrey and hopefully some Jordan Mason. That would be nice. But I get that it has not looked right for Christian McCaffrey. He's looked a little less explosive. It's looked like he's missed holes. He was inefficient the last 2 weeks. How much of that is rust? How much of that is his Achilles bothering him? I think it's hard to say. The theory of the matchup is good though, so we're going to start him. And then Kittle's just the tight end one on the year. We're not going to tell you to sit him. He's been one of the few 49ers that has looked like he wants to get back to the Super Bowl this year. I don't think it will be a massive Kittle week, but he should be good enough to start. And then Brock Purdy, it's a tricky decision. This is it, assuming he even plays, right? Like there's some back and forth about whether or not Brock's shoulder injury is serious. I get that it's hard to get a read on the 49ers injury reports just based on the way Kyle Shanahan and the entire organization kind of keeps things under the rug. Um, if Brock plays though, and we're assuming Brock is like playing at full strength Brock Purdy, it is still a tricky decision because of the defense he's playing and because of the conditions of the game. Um, Same with Jawan Jennings, right? Jawan Jennings has been Brock's most reliable option in the passing game so far this year. If we think it's going to be difficult to pass, we think it's going to be more difficult for Jawan to have an impact. And then Debo Samuel, this one hurts me so deeply. He's just been a dud this year, fantasy wise. The 49ers fans have turned on our friend Debo Samuel. They want him out of the building yesterday. The entire fan base has turned on him. I still like the player. I still think he is a unique, one of a kind type of. He brings something that not many other players can bring to an NFL team, but it has just not been his year. Are we going to tell you that Debo is going to have his biggest game of the year in a blizzard in crazy wind against the Bills? Maybe he gets a screen or something and breaks it off. That's possible. But with his production, I don't think we can go any higher than tricky decision this week. For the Bills, we're still starting Josh Allen. This is the benefit of being a dual threat quarterback, right? He has a strong arm. He should be able to drive the ball through the wind when he needs to. That's not to say he'll have a great passing performance here, but he's also just a tank that loves to take off and run. So I think he's going to get there one way or another. Same with James Cook. Weather conditions say they should be running the ball a lot. The Bills have had a lot of success running the ball this year, and the 49ers just got gashed by Josh Jacobs in the run game. No reason to believe that won't continue to happen. Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir were still calling starts given the conditions. That is because they're going to be running the more easy routes, I think. Khalil Shakir works out of the slot. He does a good job at getting open quickly and then making his hay after the catch. I think that should be a little bit easier to hit for Josh Allen. Then same with Kincaid, right? I think that he's going to get more stuff over the middle, a little bit of those easier grabs. We think that the target share is going to be there this week. The opportunity will be there. I don't think he's going to lose out too deeply on this blizzard that's going to happen. We're sitting Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel. They're just kind of the outside pieces of the passing game that maybe you start if you think the Bills go crazy throwing the ball. We don't think that's the case here. Then Amari Cooper, tricky decision. I would lean towards a sit here given the conditions and what this game is probably going to shake out to be. But, the player is still dynamic, right? He's liable to get open deep. I think you could do better, but the theory of the play is there. I don't think this is a defense to be afraid of anymore, unfortunately, as much as that hurts me. Thoughts on this one, Yanni?
Nah, man, everything you said's right. So yeah, just for Brock, I love Brock as a fantasy asset. I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks in football. But for this week with this, I mean, dude, me and Ted were at a game where there was a light drizzle in Santa Clara, and Brock was throwing the ball like into the dirt, 10 feet over people's heads. He's got small hands. He's a smaller dude. He's a weaker arm guy. The conditions really affect him. I will probably be picking up like Will Levis off the waiver wire to stream over Brock, or Matt Stafford this week over Brock. That's just kind of where I'm at with him, and I love the player. I just think this is the week to fade him. And then JJ and Debo. Debo, I'm starting JSN over, but I mean, I was doing that last week too. I probably would have done that anyway. I'm starting, JSN DeAndre Hopkins over him. JJ, I am starting. I love JJ. I think he's a locked in starter when the weather's normal, but I'm going to start Lad McConkey over him in one league. I'm going to start Calvin Ridley over him in another league. So just stuff like that. I think you probably want to be avoiding all these guys, and even Shakir. Like if Shakir, I think will do just fine this week. But if you have like a better option, someone that's on the fringe, I just want to, dude, 30 to 40 miles an hour in a snowstorm is ridiculous. I know that old school NFL fans love the snow games. I hate it. There's no reason for a professional sport like this to be played outdoors. It is absolutely ridiculous if you take a minute and step back that they just accept that a monsoon occurs during a game in a sporting event. Could you imagine in basketball or boxing or something, just some other sport, how insane it would be if we allowed a full-blown weather storm to be played to happen on the court? I think it's just time for the NFL to be a domed game. I think every new stadium that's built should have to be in a dome, but that's a conversation for another day. Yeah, avoid your players in this game.
Yeah, and needless to say, I did not mention this because I didn't think it was relevant. But if Brock does not go, Brandon Allen is a sit. We do not value Brandon Allen as a tricky decision if Brock can't go.
Sure, Debo and JJ. I think you can start CMC and Kittle, but goddamn. Okay, Browns, 18-point implied team total. The Jameis crab legs, 18-point implied team total. Broncos, 23.5-point implied team total. For the Browns, look, man, I think they're going to have to pass all game. I think Tillman's going to be out with a concussion. Judy's just been too hot to call a sit, even with the tough cornerback matchup this week in Patrick Surtain. I still like him, dude. I still think they're going to be trailing a lot. The ball travels nice and far in that high altitude in Mile High. So Judy and Njoku, start him, no problem. Winston, look, he's a tricky decision. He's much closer to a sit for me. I hope this isn't a week where you have to stream quarterback. There are plenty of better options, man. Go get yourself a Will Levis if you're looking at Jameis Winston starting for you this week. But I don't think he's dead in the water at all, and he's liable to throw for 350 yards any game. You just don't know, man. He might throw for 350 and 4 touchdowns. He might throw for 105 and 2 picks. I don't know, but that's part of the fun of Jameis Winston, and why we all love him. And look, but now I will say this: I bet you we get an interesting pregame snippet from him. That is must-see TV for me. I tune in for the Jameis pregame snippets. And look, with Tillman out, Moore's actually been getting more than enough volume. Moore is a sneaky DFS start this week. I think I like me some more this week. I have not liked him all year, even though he's been pretty productive. I do think this is a good one to get him in your lineup. Again, I probably more in 14, 16 team leagues. I don't think so in 12, but look, man, you're perfectly acceptable if you want to roll him out there, especially in full PPR. We're calling Chubb a sort of tricky decision. He's just been so damn inefficient on the ground, man. He had 2 touchdowns last week, his first kind of big week. I don't think I can start him with any level of confidence. I have a couple Chubb. Well, actually, I traded him away in 2 of my leagues. I still have him in 1 league. I'm starting Ramondre Stevenson over him, and I am starting Bucky Irving over him in that league. So, I think he's more of an emergency start at this point. I like Najee a little bit more than him. I like Jalen Warren in full PPR more than Chubb. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with him. I don't think he's terrible, though. I think he always has a chance to fall in the end zone. I believe he has 3 touchdowns this year, maybe 4. So, I mean, it's not terrible. The Broncos, there's not a whole lot to say. Nix and Sutton are weekly starts. Nix has been a tremendous starting quarterback since he came in. There's that stat that's been floating around all week. I forget what week it's since. Maybe it's weeks 4 or 5 or 6. Some random week. Since then, he's had like 16 or 18 touchdowns and 2 turnovers. He's been playing really good, really efficient football. He's been a really solid fantasy quarterback. Sutton has been the beneficiary of that. He's been a top 15 quarterback this year. He's looked so good. He's basically a weekly starter at this point. This should be a game that forced him to pass a little bit. I want no part. Last week, I said what to do about the running back when we made the slides. I'm just going to tell you guys, I want no part in this. I mean, I've been saying it all year, but I'll reiterate here. I want no part in trying to decide which Broncos running back is going to be the Broncos running back that week, and neither should you. I don't care what your options are. Get a different option. If you put one of those guys in, you're basically just saying, maybe, like, I hope, right? But again, man, like, Jalen Warren was on most of my waiver wires this week. Like, Tajay Spears was on most of my waiver wires this week. Jerome Ford even is on a lot of waiver wires this week. Dude, go get someone like that and don't roster one of these dudes. Don't sit there and guess every week. Even if someone goes down, I just don't know what you're going to get out of them. So that's it. Nix and Sutton for your starts. Go Jameis, man. I would love to see Jameis Winston get on a little streak here to end the year.
The only things I have on this, right? I would not drop Javonte Williams. I get that I wouldn't start him with confidence at any point, right? I still think that he's a little bit ahead of the other guys, and I think the other guys, Julian McLaughlin, right, Audric Estime, you could drop them, but I would still hold on to Javonte. And then for the Browns, I think little hidden narrative here, the Jerry Jeudy revenge game, the Jag revenge game. I know that Jameis takes care of his guys. I know that Jerry Judy's going to be matched up with Pat Surtain this week. Don't care. He's getting 20 targets. He's going to eat. He's going to eat this week against Pat Surtain. Jameis is going to take care of him. God, I hope the Browns win. All right, I think that's going to do it for us, though. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. It helps the channel out. Question of the day for the audience. I got it. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving week here. This episode will be dropping the day before Thanksgiving. Let us know in the comments, not like what your favorite Thanksgiving food is, but what your favorite Thanksgiving side is. Everybody has the turkey debate. I don't want to hear about that. I want to hear what the extra thing that is brought to the table that is your favorite food. For me, it is the sweet potato casserole with like those little marshmallows on the top. Delicious. Big sweet potato guy.
I've never had that in my life.
Oh, it's so
Ever.
good, dude. It's so good.
Uh, oh God, I have a gross one that's weird. I wouldn't eat it for years, but I've started to. For me, it's a Greek. It's like a peasant thing. You take a loaf of sourdough bread and you make a stuffing with it, where you take the turkey gizzards and you like cook the turkey gizzards down. You take chicken broth, turkey broth, and you like break down a loaf of sourdough bread with nuts and like turkey drippings in it. And it's a weird type of stuffing. It's like what poor people eat in Greece, and I love it. So that's my weird one.
Interesting. All right, let us know. Also,
Sick.
let us know in the comments what sounds more gross to you: sweet potatoes or turkey gizzard stuffing.
Not even close. Not even close for me. I wouldn't eat a sweet potato casserole. That's hilarious. Yeah.
All right, and we will
Hey man.
catch you for the gambling show on Wednesday.